Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is really exciting. And I wanted to start with a little audience participation, which is put your hand up if you've read Wuthering Heights. Keep your hand up if you liked Wuthering Heights. Okay, so I'm amongst, all right, I see you, person in the middle. I'm sort of in the middle as well. I think Amy might have said in the introduction, it was very quiet back there, but I read this novel as a teen, but I have no real memory of actually reading it. And then I reread it for this conversation. And that was my first encounter, but I want to start with both of you. What was your first encounter with Wuthering Heights? And did you love it immediately?
I discovered Wuthering Heights through Jane Eyre, right? I read Jane Eyre when I was a teenager, and I just loved it. I couldn't put it down. I stayed up all night long reading it. It was so weird and dark and kind of brooding and angry. And then I read Wuthering Heights, and I didn't like it, actually. I was confused by it. I didn't really understand why I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't understand why all the characters' names were like kind of the same or confusing. And it wasn't until I'd read it like 3 or 4 times, and I was like maybe 30 years old, that I began to love it. And then I realized that I loved it more than Jane Eyre. So for me it was an acquired taste. So now I do love it, but it took me at least 20 years to love it, I think.
Yeah, I didn't read it till 4 years ago. I hadn't read it as a teenager because that was like a book for girls. And I picked it up a few years ago, and I was like, this book is really fucking weird. So I liked it. I don't think I got it all, but I enjoyed it.
And I love that you both use the word weird, because that's exactly how I felt when I read it. I just remember coming away with this feeling of like, yeah, like what are these people? And the thing that you mentioned about everyone having the same name really confused me, right? Like you've got Heathcliff, who is technically named after one of Kathy's like dead older brothers, correct? And then you have Edgar Linton, who she eventually marries, and then not his son, Heathcliff's son is named Linton, and then Catherine has a child named Kathy. Or does she go by Kathy or just by Catherine?
They both go by both in
By both,
different
which
parts. There's
amazing,
Kathy,
makes
Catherine,
it even
yeah.
makes it even clearer. Sorry,
And there's a Hindley in there, you know.
There's Hindley, Heathcliff,
Right.
Hareton.
Hareton. And when I was reading the book, I felt like this was so odd, but reading your book, this biography, a lot of it actually came from Emily Bronte's life. And I'm wondering if you could talk about just a little bit, because we're going to talk about her all the way through this conversation, how her life inspired the strangeness of this novel.
Yeah, I could talk for an hour about this, but I'm not going to. I will say I think there are really 2 important passages in Wuthering Heights that I'll just mention briefly. One is when Heathcliff disinterrs or digs up Catherine's grave twice, right? And the other is, oh my God, I just forgot the other. Sorry, my mind just wandered. Anyway, so let's stick with that one. So Emily Bronte grew up in Haworth, West Yorkshire, which is this kind of a small village on the top of this hill with the beautiful kind of barren moors stretched out around her. When she was about 3, her mother died, and her mother died of cancer, and it took 7 months for her to die. Like, it was very agonizing and sort of a scary experience for a 3-year-old child. And then her body was kept in the house for 7 days while a stonemason dug the vault underneath the church floor, and then she was put in a coffin. Then she was put in the vault, and then it was covered by a stone. And then, not many years later, her 2 elder sisters died, Mariah and Elizabeth, when they were 10 and 11, and they were also put in that vault with the stone put down. And somehow I feel like that the space of the grave is really important to Emily Bronte, and so many of her poems are about thinking about what's happening down in that grave, or people are in dungeons, or they're in prisons, and they're thinking about what's outside the prison or the dungeon. So I think that Emily was really inspired by the deaths of many of her family members and the way that they were put in this space. And then she likes to imagine that space, just like Heathcliff wants to kind of imagine what's happening to Catherine what's happening to her corpse, right, under the earth. I just remember the second thing. The second thing about Wuthering Heights is there's this wonderful ballad that is sung by Nellie, Nellie Dean, the servant, sorry. And it's about a mother dies, and she's buried in a vault underground, and her children are being abused by a stepmother. And so she comes back to life, and she comes out of the tomb, and she sort of takes care of the children. She combs their hair, and she tells the father, "I'll come back. If the children are abused again, I'll come back." And then she goes back into the grave. And so there's something about, I think, both of those three, I guess, passages that seem important to me, and that really came from Emily Bronte's own relationship to death.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk a lot about what kind of a story Wuthering Heights is, but it is a story that's like really obsessed with death in a way. And something that struck me when I was reading it this time was how people would just sort of say, like, "I'm so upset, I'm gonna die. Like, I'm just doing it." And they would just die. And I had a really hard time with that. And I did a little bit of reading after reading your book, and the average age of, I don't know how you would say this, but like average lifespan of the village that Emily Bronte and her family spent their time in was 19 years old. Yeah. And the reason for that is that, from what I understand, there was a like sewage overflow and a graveyard overflow into their drinking water supply.
Part of it was cholera, which I guess you can catch it in different ways, but you can catch it through bad sewage getting into your water. Part of it was also that it was an early industrialized place, so people were dying in the coal mines. There were a lot of quarries and mines around there. People were dying in industrial accidents. There was a lot of textile mills, and it was sort of there were a lot of dangerous jobs that people had. And it was an unhealthy place. Yeah,
and there was so much tuberculosis, so much. Everybody was dying of tuberculosis. We've talked a little bit about how strange the book is, and I couldn't tell of how much of it was strange because I was receiving it so far after it had come out. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how the novel was first received. Like, did it land as experimental and like ahead of its time, or were people just like, "This is really freaking weird"?
The critics mostly hated it. They said it was. They said
What
it
do
was.
critics know?
Yeah, they said it was. They said it was savage and coarse and blasphemous, but weirdly, like, it kind of is. And I think now, and I think that probably Emily read those critics and thought, "Oh yeah, that's what I was trying to do," but they hated it for that. But I think that we today, or me, I love it for that. So there was a way that the critics kind of recognized what she was trying to do, but they hated it. But it didn't sell badly, but she died just a year after it came out, which I find is really sad. She never knew that it was going to become a famous novel. I mean, for all she knew, it was poorly received. It was going to disappear into the mists of time. And then here we are still talking about it well over 100 years later.
Sean, I'm curious about, we're going to talk a lot about the movies, but what did you think of the book? Like, what's your lasting impression of, like, what is this story about?
That love is a frightening, scary, horrible thing.
Will eat you up alive.
Yeah, it's really destructive and savage and blasphemous and all the things I look for in a book, really.
And I'm glad you bring that up, because Wuthering Heights has often been described as the greatest love story of all time. You will see that in a clip that we're going to play in a little bit. And I have to say that I read a lot of romance. I consider myself something of a little bit of an expert on it. And when I read this book, I thought to myself, this is not a romance. To me, it seems very clearly like a story about generational abuse and trauma and like the corruptive power of selfishness. And I want to also ask you about what you think the story is about and why this, like, I don't know if misunderstanding is the right word, but this perception of the story persists.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a revenge story, not a love story. And I think that people are uncomfortable with that, maybe, and they are uncomfortable with how violent the story is and how cruel it is. And I think they sort of pluck out the Heathcliff and Catherine part and call it romance and love, and then they make movies with that, with just that sort of part in mind. So I think it's kind of a misreading of the book when it's treated just as a love story. And I also think that it loses a lot of nuance when it's treated just as a love story. I mean, yeah, there is a love story in there of a sort. But if you read the whole book, it's so much more complex. There's so much more going on, obviously, than just a love story.
It's interesting. The first Wuthering Heights movie, it was a 1920 British silent film that, like most silent films, has been lost to time. But it was billed as a story of hate.
Really?
And then when the 1939 one came out, it was billed as the greatest love story ever told.
Uh-huh. And that's interesting that it was billed as both of those things, because I think hate can sell really well too. People love a revenge story, and I kind of wonder why it's not marketed as such.
There's not that much difference between love and hate.
Ooh, somebody's been reading Enemies to Lovers.
Just personal experience.
And it's worth noting that Emily was 30 years old when she died, and that the characters in this book are also really young. I think that when Kathy makes the decision to marry Edgar Linton, she's like 15, I want to say 15, 16.
Maybe a little bit older. I don't quite. She was a teenager.
Right. And I part of my theory about why this persists is a lot of people read this story when they're adolescents as well. They're teenagers, and they're reading about these teenagers who are obsessed with each other. And it sort of feels like, oh, this is actually about me. You know, like this is my story. So I don't know. I'm going kind of back to what you were talking about, Deborah. Like, does it matter when you read Wuthering Heights? Does it matter when you get to this story?
I don't know. I feel like, it's a book that has so much depth to it. Like, I feel like every time I read it, I discover something new. I mean, I've read it so many times, but it's almost like I feel like I'm walking into a house, a kind of a magical house that has like many stories, like an attic and a basement. And each time I go in, that is to say, read the book, I'm discovering like new rooms and sort of new things I didn't notice. So there's just something so rich about the book. So I'm not sure. I mean, I suppose it's probably the case that if you read it when you're really young, and you might see it as a sort of a tale of passion, but then when you read it when you're much older, you might see something really different. And I think that it's the kind of book that can withstand many readings, and you can just get more from it as you age with it, so to speak.
We've got a really good question from the audience here, and I'm going to put this to both of you. What do you think the public reception of the story tells us about how we view romantic relationships as a culture? Big question. I.e., a story of hate versus an epic love story.
I mean, anything tragic always gets interpreted as romantic. I mean, Romeo and Juliet's a terrible story. It's like these dumb kids fool around and kill themselves a couple days later. You know, there's a long history of this.
What do you think, Deborah?
Yeah, I guess I will say that I feel like there's a lot of sadomasochism in the book, and that Emily Bronte herself was interested in sadomasochism. And I feel that that's kind of somehow that's baked into our culture today, that often love and sex has a sort of SM kind of turn to it. So, yeah.
Speaking of SM and BDSM, we're going to talk a little bit now about the Emerald Fennell adaptation of the book. And specifically, I want to talk a little bit about Heathcliff. But first, we're going to watch a clip of the trailer.
What should you do, Heathcliff, if you were rich?
Suppose I'd do what all rich men do. Live in a big house. And be cruel to my servants. Take a wife.
A wife? What wife?
Heathcliff is gone. You must accept it.
Why did you leave me?
Why did you betray your own heart?
Before I say anything about this adaptation, how many people have already seen it? Okay. And how many of you liked it? All right. I didn't have a particularly positive view of this movie. And I mentioned at the top that I was not a big Wuthering Heights fan. And after watching the movie, I felt like I had new respect for Emily Bronte. Before I sort of ask more about Heathcliff, I wanted to get your reactions both to that trailer and also to the movie itself.
I didn't love the movie. I guess one thing I was disappointed by is that there are only like 2 short phrases from the actual book. And that kind of bothered me. It's a beautifully written book. It's full of dialogue. Actually, it's a very oral book, like full of dialogue. That kind of bothered me. And I wanted Heathcliff to not be as white and fratty. I feel like Jacob Elordi is too white and fratty to play Heathcliff, and that bothered me. I kind of liked the costumes though, and the kind of the beautiful interiors that were kind of strange. I enjoyed that. Like I enjoyed sort of it visually. I had mixed feelings about it. I was really thrilled that when the movie came out, or before the movie came out, all these people discovered for the first time the book Wuthering Heights. I mean, it was incredible how suddenly Wuthering Heights was like this bestseller, and that was amazing to me. So I think for that reason, I love the movie. Period.
Okay.
I don't think great books or great works really lend themselves to great movies. Like usually bad books make great movies. If you watch, like,
What about Jurassic Park?
Jurassic Park's a really not a good book.
Okay,
You look at The Godfather, Jaws. The Bridges in Madison County is the worst book I've ever read, and that movie is fantastic. So I think it's sort of like there's never been a satisfactory Hamlet. There's all Hamlets with good elements, but there's never one movie version of Hamlet you can look at and say that's Hamlet. So it's something like Wuthering Heights. A filmmaker can take it and sort of strip it for the parts that interest them and explore their own fetishes and hang-ups, which this is certainly full of. And, like she said, she wanted to make the movie that was in her head when she was 13 years old, and it really feels like this strange, expressionistic, I'm horny, everything is sticky, there's this bad guy, he's ruining my family, he's kind of hot.
I like the sticky stuff.
Yeah, there's so much. It's a very moist film.
It's a very moist film, and I liked that actually.
I don't really even know how to touch that. But what I will say about the movie, I think what you were saying, Sean, about it it takes a lot of liberties. And watching the trailer back, I feel like a lot of the liberties that Emerald Fennell is taking seem to lean towards like really amplifying the romantic hero-ness of Heathcliff's character. And when people talk about Heathcliff, or even like, as I said, I'm a romance reader, and sometimes people will like describe the heroes in their romance novels as Heathcliff-like. He is positioned as this like great romantic hero. And watching the movie, I kind of felt like so many parts of the book that make Heathcliff a complicated character had been stripped away from a more like flat, broody, angsty, evil, hot love interest type role. And I am curious, Sean, also about how you think maybe how Heathcliff has been depicted in adaptations, whether that has led to some of this disconnect between who he is in the books, which is more of a villain, and like who the culture sees him as, which is more a romantic hero.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big lingering Heathcliff stereotype is because of the 1939 film, a classic with Laurence Olivier as this hunky, broody, and that sort of set the template for the next 37 adaptations. So there's
actually
been a lot.
32. 32.
Yeah, one of my most insane friends watched all of them for an article, and he's got a lot of time on his hands.
I don't think you could pay me to do that.
I think one thing about the book it seems important to me is that Heathcliff is a mourner, right? The book opens and Catherine's already dead, has already been dead for like 20 years. And we see him mourning and grieving her. And that to me is perhaps perversely romantic, actually. I mean, the way he feels about her, and that he can mourn her for basically forever. I think that Emily Bronte was trying to make something mythic there. But it's not how we think of love and romance generally. I think it was something more oceanic almost, or cosmic, or but I'll just also a side point, which is going to show that I'm an English professor, that Heathcliff is based on the Byronic hero, right? Lord Byron's hero, who is this kind of, he's this brooding, angry, fallen person who might be saved by the one true love, right? And so that you can sort of see that, like, he might be saved by Catherine Earnshaw as his one true love, but he's not, of course, because she marries someone else and dies, and etc. And so he's damned forever in his own hell because she's died. So I don't know what I'm saying about that, but yeah.
Well, also in the newest movie, like, sex and death are so wound up together. Like, if you haven't seen it, it opens on a black screen and it sounds like you're hearing someone having sex, and then it reveals it's a guy being hung, and that's his moaning, and then all the kids are watching him get hung and they laugh because he's got an erection as he dies. So it's all right there in the first 30 seconds.
I feel like that opening is really icky, but I will say that I will say that the book Wuthering Heights does have a lot of mixture of love and sex and death. I mean, again, as I mentioned earlier, there's Heathcliff digs up Catherine's corpse twice, and he says, I want to, die with my cheek up against her, like my frozen cheek, right? So there's a kind of physicality to their relationship after she dies that seems somehow more meaningful and vital than when she's alive, right? So there is something about the inspiration of death, or the continuing to love someone's body even when they're a corpse. Sorry, that sounds really weird, but I think it's totally within in the realm of the book and the movie.
I can't believe they left that scene out of the movie. I was sure
Jacob Elordi jumping on a coffin,
there
flying.
must have been something in his contract or something.
I want to see that in a movie, frankly. I kind of do.
Well, you alluded to this a little bit earlier with the Jacob Elordi casting as white and fratty, and there's a dimension to Heathcliff that we haven't talked about yet, which is that in the book, and there's a lot of like scholarly discussion or debate, and we're not going to solve it tonight, but there's, to me, it seems like enough indication that Emily Bronte might have written Heathcliff as a man of color, or she wouldn't have used that language, of course, but, someone who is not, sorry, this earpiece is really giving me trouble. Someone who is not of the sort of like Western European Christian background of the community that he's in. He's described as dark, almost as it came from the devil. And we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to watch a clip in just a second diving into that. But just so we have a sense of like, what would Emily Bronte have intended at that time? What would she have been aware of? Are people who are up in arms about the fact that Heathcliff was cast as a white man, are they valid to sort of feel that way?
I think they're valid to feel that way. I mean, I will say that Heathcliff is a literary character, not a real person. I think there's a way, even I kind of want to think of him as a person, and I'm like, oh, he's based. Anyway. But Emily Bronte, her parents were abolitionists. Her father was sponsored at Cambridge by William Wilberforce, the great abolitionist. Ever since she was a child, all the children were writing about African characters and black characters. Also, Branwell was writing a novel when the three sisters were writing their first novels. So that's Wuthering Heights, Agnes Grey, and the professor, Charlotte Bronte's novel. He was writing a novel with a black character, a black African man who comes to England and is kind of a powerful figure, although it's a really racist depiction, but still he's kind of an important character to Branwell's unfinished novel. And so I feel like Emily had all that stuff in her mind when she was working on Heathcliff, when she was writing Wuthering Heights. Also, Frederick Douglass came to Yorkshire and was doing like a lecture tour when Emily Bronte was writing Wuthering Heights. I mean, she probably didn't go see him speak, but his lectures were published in the local newspapers, and she was reading all those local newspapers. So I don't know. I mean, it's totally unclear whether she means him to be black or a person of color, but I do think she had those questions in her mind when she was creating Heathcliff.
Mm-hmm. So. And there is an adaptation that does have a man of color, a black man, play Heathcliff, and that's the 2011 adaptation. We're going to watch the trailer.
Will you forget me?
I could no more forget you than myself.
Heathcliff.
Close your eyes. Open your mouth. you not think of me all this time?
Give me hope in silence, it's easier, it's kinder. Tell me not of heartbreak, it plagues my soul, it plagues my soul.
You've treated me so badly, Kathy.
But I came and I was nothing.
You broke my heart.
Time will give us nothing.
You killed me.
I'll never leave you. Never again.
So very different vibe from the Emerald Fennell. Just a quick temp check. How many people have seen this version of the story? Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow, that's surprising. I really love it, actually.
Yeah.
I know that you guys had different opinions, but I love this version myself.
What did you think, Sean?
I liked it. The kids are so much better than the adult characters. When the kids leave, I'm kind of like, oh, well. But no, I like it. I mean, the director, Andrea Arnold, I mean, she usually makes these dramas about modern day Britain and, poverty, and they're all in council houses, and everyone's always swearing and Cockney at each other. And she kind of just did that with Wuthering Heights.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about lines missing from the book. There's like none of the book.
That was my big qualm with this version too, is I thought it was like visually quite interesting, but I think I said this probably 15 times in the house while I was watching. I was like, why is no one speaking? Everyone is just looking at each other really, really intensely. And it's saying something, but I missed that dialogue.
I think what I loved about this version is the weather. The weather's so important to the book. I mean, it's called Wuthering Heights, which basically means like a windy high place, right? So the wind and the storms. And I feel like Emily Bronte really wants us to think of Catherine and Heathcliff as these elemental forces that are have to do with storm and wind, and Heathcliff is Heath and Cliff, right? He's like a natural emanation coming out of the ground. And I think this movie does a really good job of that. It's like you saw there's like dirt, it's constantly raining, there's wind, like there's a wonderful sense of the natural scenery and how important weather was to Emily Bronte's work.
I felt that the movie was very gritty, and I watched it at the beginning of my prep, and it really sort of influenced how I experienced the rest of both the original book and the other take on it. And coming back to the idea of Heathcliff as a person of color, seeing him played by a Black man really lent an extra dimension for me to the film, with the idea that like when Hindley is lashing out at Heathcliff, it makes the fact that he's ostracized by this community, even his like the baptism scene where they're like baptizing him as Heathcliff and trying to kind of convert him into fitting in with this town, it added that extra dimension. And then it started, when I read the book right after that, it started to make me think also about this idea of Heathcliff. This is going to get like a little bit meta narrative, but it felt a little like some sort of Orientalist narrative where you have this like evil force, this person from another culture, community coming into this other, peaceful white Christian family and disturbing the balance of peace. And we see that over and over again. We hear that in the book, right? Nellie says, everything was going well until Heathcliff showed up again, And I'm curious also, has that element of like, the narrative of like, be careful of who you let in your house, which feels very racialized. Has that really been addressed in many of the adaptations? Is that something that people who care about Wuthering Heights like concern themselves with?
I don't feel like I've seen that in adaptations personally. I haven't seen all the adaptations though, and he has seen more than I have. So I have mixed feelings about this, because I think there is a way of reading this as a racist presentation of of a person of color who comes in and breaks up the family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's called a cuckoo bird, like he's the bird that comes in and kicks out the other eggs from the nest and takes over the nest. But I really feel like Emily Bronte identified with Heathcliff. I think weirdly she really loved Heathcliff and thought of herself as Heathcliff. I think if Emily Bronte is in the book at all, it's as Heathcliff as a character. I think that even though I'm not sure that I agree with this myself, I feel like she feels like Heathcliff is treated very terribly, and that he maybe is correct or he's justified in his violence and revenge. So I think in that sense, it gives it a kind of a little bit of a different approach. I'm not sure. Yeah.
What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think casting a black actor opens up a whole other can of worms, and I can see why Emerald Fennell didn't want to touch that, particularly in the...
Say a little bit more about what you mean.
Well, I mean, no, it's that exact, you open yourself up to that exact reading, that, you know, the...
Yeah, I've seen versions. I saw a musical version, which was very good, weirdly, of Wuthering Heights. And the Heathcliff was played by an Indian man, a man from India, which seemed kind of more fitting, weirdly. I'm not sure why. I'm not going to go into why, but
I did read a little bit about this. I think that there are some folks, and I can't remember if he's referred to explicitly in the text, but as like the child of.
Well, he's referred explicitly. He's something like a Lascar, which is like an Indian sailor.
Right.
But he's also called like a gypsy.
Right.
He's called a black, some sort of a black.
Right.
He's also called. I'm actually forgetting some of the other terms. So, Nellie says, you know, your father might be the emperor of China. I think India is mentioned a couple of times in relation
something
to
like
him
your
too.
father might be the emperor of China, and like your mother an Indian queen or something,
like an Indian princess or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Who amongst us, right? We have an audience question here that I think is actually really something I hadn't thought about. Why didn't Heathcliff kill himself after Catherine's death, as depicted in most tragic romances when both lovers die around the same time? I'm curious what you think about that.
I think he's angry and he wants revenge. And he wants revenge so badly that he's willing to ruin the next generation.
Yeah.
Like he has this mythic rage. He wants to ruin everyone, including the children, the blameless children of the people who wronged him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's where some of his power comes from. Is it's an incredible revenge tale.
Yeah.
So it's not just about love. I think that's really key to the story.
I'm glad you bring up the second generation, because most film and screen versions of Wuthering Heights omit the second generation, where Heathcliff, most of you seem to have read this book, but for those who haven't, he makes it his business basically to both gain control of Wuthering Heights, the home that he grew up in, and the Grange, which is the home that Kathy marries into, by essentially marrying her daughter to his son and destroying both families in the process. And to me, this is the part of the book that I found the most interesting. And I don't know why it's left out of most film versions. What do you think, Sean?
Well, it's so narratively unwieldy.
Yeah.
I mean, there is one that tries it. There's a version with Ralph Fiennes that came out in 1992, and
it's so bad.
It's terrible.
Is it?
Actually, Ralph Fiennes' first movie role was as Heathcliff, which is
wow. He really could have like tanked and then right out. Never saw him again.
It's. I mean, I know, like for me, having only seen the movies when I was reading the book 4 years ago for the first time, and Catherine
What's
died,
this?
I was like, how much is left? Still all these pages. I mean the book's very hard to adapt anyways. There's such strange narrative scaffolding where you have this narrator and then this narrator and then this time period, that it seems like very clean just to make it about those two and cut it off when she dies.
Well, this happens also with Jane Eyre, right? Many of the film adaptations of Jane Eyre, not many, but some of the film adaptations of Jane Eyre, they cut the second part off. The whole stuff with Bertha, the madwoman in the attic, gets cut out. So I think that in that sense, both of the books are strange and unwieldy and complicated. And so to make an adaptation, it's often the case, they just kind of pull out a piece of it to simplify it.
Do you both think that perhaps only adapting the first part of the book might have also led to our thinking about Heathcliff as this romantic hero and Wuthering Heights as this love story, because it sort of ends at the end of that love story?
Yeah, and he's not completely evil yet, right?
Yeah. Although there is,
I mean, he's not like a great guy, but
this hasn't made it into. I don't think this has made it into most of the films, but there's a moment in the first part of the book where Hareton, who's Hindley's son, Hindley's drunk and he basically drops the baby off the banister, and Heathcliff just happens to be walking by underneath, and he catches the child. And you have this moment, and you read it from Nellie's perspective, where she sees Heathcliff's expression, and she sees the rage on his face because he realizes that his revenge on Hindley has been thwarted if he just didn't catch the baby. And she says that if we weren't all there, Heathcliff would have smashed the baby on the ground. And that is in the first part of the book.
Yeah, well, I think also Hindley himself was a really violent person. I mean, that's one might argue that's where Heathcliff gets some of his violence. I mean, because Hindley beats Heathcliff when they're children. Also, right around the same scene, passage as what you're talking about, Hindley takes a carving knife and he's thinking about, or starts sticking it down the throat of the servant Nellie Dean.
Yeah,
and she says, "No, it tastes like fish. I don't want that in my mouth." And I think that's actually meant to be funny. I mean, it's really awful and violent. Right. And then there's all this stuff with Hindley and Heathcliff like fighting, and there's knives and people get stabbed, and Isabella Linton gets stabbed in the neck. Heathcliff like throws a knife at her and catches her. And then there's dogs being hanged, by killing them, by hanging them. It's an incredibly violent book from the beginning.
And that is in the 2011 version of the movie. And I was very alarmed by that. And then I read the book and I was like, oh, this is actually straight from the text. Emily Bronte wrote this at the time. And we mentioned Nellie, who I think we kind of have to talk about. She's the framing device for the entire story. We read it through her telling it to some guy who's renting the Grange, and he's finding out about all of this backstory on his landlord. And most of the films are missing Nellie as a framing device. And I want to ask about, what do you think, like, why? Why are we missing Nellie?
I mean, it's so narratively convoluted.
Yeah.
You've got to streamline it at some point. Otherwise, these movies would be 4 hours long.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Nellie's role is so complicated in Wuthering Heights. I mean, some people see her as the only rational, practical person in the whole story who sort of kind of keep everything together. Other people see her as a somewhat malevolent force, a person who is a kind of a busybody and interferes and is too conventional to understand the sort of mythic passion of Catherine and Heathcliff. So some people have negative views of her, some people have positive views of her. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see a filmed version that was experimental and that tried to deal with the narrative, the weird narrative frames and the chronology switching that happens in the book. I don't think anyone has tried that, as far as I know. Any of the film versions have tried that.
Interestingly, Emerald Fennell's edition does give Nellie a bit of a bigger role, but she's cast more as a villain than anything else. She's Kathy's playmate, and she gets upset that Heathcliff shows up and steals all the thunder. Which I thought that was an interesting choice. It wasn't a choice I was particularly a fan of. Okay, I should have asked this actually earlier, but do you both have a favorite adaptation?
I don't love any of the adaptations. I mean, except for the Andrea Arnold, the 2011 one, I like a lot. I recently watched the Louis Buñuel adaptation, which is really interesting, and I kind of recommend it. But yeah, I think the 2011 one is my favorite, but I don't totally love any of them.
Yeah, I've never seen the Buñuel one, but I mean, it's sort of like I said, it's like Hamlet's. Like there's good parts of each of them, but none of them are the complete thing.
I just got an audience question for you, Sean, that I feel like it was plucked right out of my brain. In the age of multi-part movies or like a serialized Netflix TV show, do you think instead of a new film or like a new film in 2 parts, like Deathly Hallows or something like that, part 1, part 2, or maybe even a mini series could do the book better justice?
Maybe. I mean, I hate 2-part movies. It's a scourge. I hate all those YA novels that started this mess. Like if you go to a movie, it should have an ending. So...
yeah, well, I mean, there's been some BBC adaptations of Wuthering Heights that are like mini series. That like might have like 4 episodes or 3 episodes. I haven't seen any of those in a while, so I can't really remember them. But yeah, I'd like to see that. I would like to see someone do a kind of somewhat experimental mini-series, maybe like 5 episodes. I think that would be great. I think someone should do it.
I mean,
Someone
I
in the
feel like
audience should do it. You guys should do it. Think about going
New
about doing
gig?
this.
I mean, I feel like part of the challenge, right, is like, how do you keep the casting interesting, right? You could have really great, because Heathcliff is like 40 by the end of the book. I mean, sometimes like you were saying, the kid actors are a little bit better than the adult actors. And if you really love the first, I mean, it is one book.
Have Margot Robbie running around pretending to be 15 years old.
I mean, I just think that it's to me, the first part of the book and the second part of the book, they're the same story, yes, and they're a continuation of the same story, but I feel like in film, they're going to be adapted completely differently.
Maybe. I mean, I do think that both the second generation is supposed to be a repetition of the first generation with a difference, right? And so I think that repetition could be really interesting to show how there's a sense that the second generation is a redemption of the first generation, because the second generation is more adapted to be alive on this earth and able to forgive and be loving and change, which Catherine Heathcliff can't do. So I think it could be really beautiful if done correctly. I think it could be really beautiful.
There is a real nice echo in between the first part of the book where you have this scene where Kathy comes back from spending time with the Lintons and she's all like glammed up and polished, and she sees Heathcliff and she's like, "You're dirty." And there's a scene in the second half of the book where Hareton, who is Hindley's son and has basically been raised effectively and treated like Heathcliff was treated. He's run a little wild. He hasn't learned how to read. And he's got a crush on Kathy, who's his first cousin. And we just sort of have to ignore the whole first cousin element of all of this. But
cousins were always getting married back then.
Yeah. They're British.
Yeah. The family tree is just one big circle. But there's a scene in the second half of the book where Hareton is training himself to read, and Kathy number 2 makes fun of him and puts him down, and he's like, "I'm never going to learn to read. I'm never going to attempt this again." And then you end the book with him, her teaching him how to read because she apologizes, which I don't know that we ever see the original Kathy do.
Yes, there's like I said, there's a sense of redemption in the last part of the book. I just feel like there's so much complexity that's missing when you cut off that end part. Mm-hmm. I mean, as I said before, it makes the book such a different animal than it is when you have this the second generation. I mean, in some sense, it's meant to end happily, more or less. I also think it's important to remember, maybe shifting gears here slightly, that it's a ghost story. And that's one of the things that happened when Emily Bronte added the narrative frame, because Lockwood, the stranger, this weird guy, no one knows who he is, he comes in and he finds himself in this house, Wuthering Heights, and there's a snowstorm and he gets caught there, and then he sleeps in this strange bed that's like kind of like a box bed. And then he has this nightmare about this ghost girl who's outside the window, and she's knocking on the window and kind of breaks through with her arm. And then the whole book is about who is that ghost, right? And at the very end of the book, you have Lockwood looking at the graves of all the people who are dead, and there's many people who are dead. A lot of people die in the book. And he says something like, it seems to me like there are quiet sleepers on this earth, whereas there are other people who believe that Catherine Heathcliff walk as ghosts, right? So there's a kind of a supernatural framing, I think, of the book that comes when you include the second generation.
Yeah. Sean, do you remember if there are other adaptations that deal with the supernatural element? I feel like I didn't see that in either, maybe the 2011 or...
No, I don't. None that I can remember, but I know the 1992 one that tries to cover the whole book. I'll also mention that's an hour and 42 minutes long.
Oh my God.
And also, going back to what we were talking about earlier, Ralph Fiennes has a really conspicuous tan.
Also, his hair is terrible. I can't remember it fully, but it's kind of like a mullet, but in like a ponytail.
It was 1992, yeah. He looks like he's in like one of those. He's in a band.
I won't be watching that. We are going to circle back to Emily Bronte and her life and how that sort of affected the themes of this story. And we're going to start with a clip from the BBC about the Bronte sisters.
I really wanted it to feel as authentic as it could. I wanted people to, when they watch it, to really feel that they're transported back in time. It's not a chocolate boxy world.
What's the matter? Somebody has been in my room.
I hope it does reflect the real kind of world that they lived in.
It's not like a sugar-coated image or show about the Bronte sisters or Bronte family. I shouldn't have, but I'm not sorry. I mean, I am sorry. It actually shows them as real people, and there's a lot more that went on in their household that people don't necessarily know about.
What happened? It's not about the Brontes. It's about a family. And the dynamics in that family. You wouldn't think that these three girls, closeted in this parsonage on a windy hillside in Yorkshire, would turn out to write novels with such depth and such insight as they did.
And this was a really interesting family. All of the children were writers, the 4 that survived towards adulthood. And Emily, from what I understand from your biography, is that she spent a lot of time in the home around the area that she grew up in. And there's a lot of folks who wonder how she could have written this sort of angry, passionate, destructive story, given the context that she had. But you've pointed out that she watched 2 of her siblings sort of have this unconsummated, well, I don't know about her brother, but unconsummated love affairs with people they couldn't have. Unrequited, that's the word I'm looking for. And I'm wondering also about that element too, what was going on in the family that shaped the themes of this book.
Well, one thing I'll say, and this is going on a different direction a little bit from what you were just saying. This clip was a Sally Wainwright biopic, which is very good. I recommend it. It's called To Walk Invisible, right? And it kind of deals with the fact that the 3 sisters were collaborators, right? They collaborated on their novels, which I just think is such an important element to understanding the books, that all of those books were written in collaboration, Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre and all the other ones. And the sisters really loved each other. I mean, they were very, very close. I mean, there was some competitiveness for sure, and you see this in this biopic, but they were just very close. And I forgot, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I have a different thought, but because I want to respond to what you just said, which is the competitiveness. And we were talking about this in the green room, that I had this question, which is that when the book originally came out and Emily Bronte passed away, I think shortly after, people didn't know that it was written by her. And I was wondering, how exactly did people find out? And you said that Charlotte Bronte basically told everybody because she thought the book was so weird. She didn't want anyone thinking that she wrote it.
She had written it, yeah.
Which is so sibling coded. It's that book was really weird and I don't want you to worry about it. I didn't write it, but my sister did.
Yeah, no, that happened exactly. So they first published their novels under pseudonyms that were kind of ambiguously gendered, right? So it was Ellis Bell, Acton Bell, and Currer Bell, but they kept their same initials, you can see. And so, Ellis Bell, is that a man or a woman? We don't know. But Charlotte, after her 2 sisters died, she reissued Wuthering Heights and Agnes Grey, and she didn't really like those books, and so she really wanted to make it clear that she wasn't the writer, because there was some confusion about the fact that some people thought that the Bell brothers were just one person, and that one person had written Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights and Agnes Grey. And so she came out in print to say, I don't love this book, Wuthering Heights. I didn't write it. It was written by my sister, Emily. And so she kind of unmasked her sisters and gendered them, but she didn't unmask herself, interestingly, in that she kept her Currer Bell disguise at that point.
It's an interesting hypothetical, right? If she had liked Wuthering Heights, do you think she would have ever said anything? And then would we ever know that Emily Bronte wrote the book?
Well, I think that, one thing that happened, so Wuthering Heights was written before Jane Eyre, and I think that Jane Eyre was very influenced by Wuthering Heights. But Jane Eyre was published first. and I won't go into that whole story, how that happened, but Jane Eyre was incredibly popular when it came out, and eventually made Charlotte Bronte famous, and gave her some money. I mean, she wasn't super wealthy, but she made some money off of her writing after that. And so with Wuthering Heights, of course, came out second, and I think that Wuthering Heights would have disappeared sort of in the mists of time if Jane Eyre hadn't been so popular, right? So there's a way that Jane Eyre kind of pulled Wuthering Heights into the world and into today, and so that it could be rediscovered in the 20th century by people like me. I mean, I didn't rediscover it, but people like me, but much earlier, like in the 20th century. So in that, but I think that Emily would have been pissed off if she had known that was going to happen, because Wuthering Heights came first, and I think really did influence Jane Eyre. But somehow the opposite was kind of what the result was. Does that make sense? That Jane Eyre was the big novel, and Wuthering Heights was the lesser novel that came after.
Yeah. We're going to play another clip from the Emily biopic. I don't know when exactly this came out.
Emily, how did you write Wuthering Heights? Shall we begin?
Miss Emily Brontë.
You're off to become a wonderful teacher.
You know I don't like to meet new people.
What do you want to do?
Do you think I could be a writer? I have lots of stories.
Mr. Wayton will be tutoring you in French.
He speaks with such poetry. Any man can speak. What I want to know is, can he actually do?
Do what?
You're supposed to be an artist. So be an artist.
What is that?
I wrote it.
Freedom in thought!
Freedom in thought!
Come on.
Freedom in thought!
Freedom in thought!
They've written in like a little love story for her, and just based on that trailer, it looks like.
That's her brother, right?
Oh God, is it?
Well, there's a lot of incest. I feel like there's a lot of incest in Wuthering Heights. And Emily was reading a lot of Gothic novels that have incest. So incest is something that one might bring up. I think, but yes, so we don't know if Emily ever had an affair. She probably didn't. But one problem I had with this version, and this happens a lot, is I feel like women writers, people are more likely than with male writers to think like, how did she write this great book? Like, where'd she get it from? Oh, it must have been a romance. She must have fallen in love with a man, and then she used that. And that kind of annoys me. Like, I really want to think of Wuthering Heights as a book that came from her imagination, that she was this brilliant, talented writer, and she wrote this amazing book. And I feel like that biopic to some extent makes it seem like she had to have a love affair in order then to write Wuthering Heights. And we don't know whether she had a love affair or not. She probably didn't, but I don't feel like she needed to, because she was this amazing writer, period.
Breaking news, women have imaginations.
The thing I liked about the movie is it's a lot about her and her brother's relationship. And I have younger sisters that are much smarter than me, so I really identified with the brother character.
Yeah, you have to feel bad for Branwell. I mean, for all kinds of reasons, but he had these three brilliant sisters who were writing, and he was trying to be a writer, but he was troubled. He had mental illness. We left aside the whole unrequited love thing. Oh, so Charlotte and Branwell fell in love with married people at the same time, and Branwell actually was able to had an affair with this older married woman, and Charlotte didn't get to have an affair with her older married man. But Branwell kind of couldn't get over his heart sickness. He fell in love with this woman. He couldn't have her. She ended up marrying someone else. She was already married, but then that person died. He died, and then she married someone else. And he kind of drank himself to death. I mean, he probably also had tuberculosis and.
Like everyone else.
Like always at the scene of the crime, tuberculosis.
Yeah. Where was I going with this? Sorry.
It's okay. I kind of want to end us on a note, just thinking about the sort of legacy of both this story and also Emily Brontë. as you mentioned earlier, we're here talking about this more than 100 years. I was going to say more than 1 million, but that doesn't feel right. More than 100 years after the story came out. I'm sitting here having so many questions and thoughts about this story that I felt like lukewarm about, but still found fascinating. And for both of you, I mean, for Sean, what are you going to walk away with thinking about Wuthering Heights, if you do think about it again after this? And Deborah, for you, what do you think we should walk away from this, like knowing about Emily Brontë and this story that she created? I'll start with you, Sean.
I've thought a lot about Wuthering Heights this week.
I know, me too.
I might need a little break from it for a while.
Me too.
No offense, guys. No, I mean, it's just great that an old piece of literature can be so weird and open to all these new interpretations. And like we were saying, there's still so many possibilities. You can do so much more stuff with this book, you know? And as far as I'm concerned, the crazier directors want to bring their fetishes to it, the more fun, you know?
Get freaky with it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. One thing I talk about in the biography, This Dark Night, is that Emily had started a second novel before she died, and we don't know how far she got with it. No drafts of it still exist. So I don't know. I like to think about that second novel and I have this kind of crackpot theory that it maybe does exist somewhere and that we're going to rediscover it. So I'll just leave you with that.
Well, thank you both so much. And can we get a round of applause?